A lot of fun here, everybody.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Look at all the fake news over there. Hello, everybody.
You can fake this,
And
right?
you know this is compliments of Trump, okay?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Mr. President,
Yes.
please don't let the United States become Brazil, my native Brazil.
We'll keep it
Please,
good.
Please, please.
We're going to make it better than ever, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Mr.
Compliments
President.
of Trump.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you over there. Have a good time.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see
You
you.
too.
Bye,
Nice to
darling.
see you.
Have a good time. Thank you.
You could have anyone, living or dead, as your perfect running mate. Who would it be?
Muhammad Ali.
Ooh, Muhammad Ali.
How you
strong.
like that?
I don't know about you, but for the last 2 weeks since the election, I have been absolutely addicted to watching the liberal media meltdown on the left. I have been absolutely addicted to it. I subscribed to The View, and I literally watch the full show every single time they upload it, just so I can see Alyssa arguing with, what's her name, Sunny, and so you could see Whoopi and Joy just lose it eventually, and they just say, "Oh, everybody, calm down, everybody." I'm enjoying this. MSNBC, I subscribe to. To tell you the truth, they haven't been as entertaining. CNN really hasn't been that entertaining. That's part of the reason why I think they're about to sell MSNBC off. But the meltdown on either side hasn't really been that entertaining. But long story short, they all have basically the common tropes. They all are still kissing up to the Kamala Harris campaign. Oh, Kamala only had 140 days, but she did a fantastic job with what she had. And, she ran a brilliant campaign, none of which is true. Kamala ran a stupid campaign, a lame campaign, a boring campaign. And she didn't actually, I would say she didn't run it. Whoever she had running it, because there's usually a campaign manager, that person did a terrible job. They did such a bad job that some people might argue that they were embezzling money. I'm not going to make that as a claim, but some people have argued it was a scam, because the reality is you took in over $1 billion, and by some accounts it looks like 1.7 billion. Depending upon, whether you count free additions to your media. Because you got to remember, during 2016, Trump was getting basically free media coverage because the media was coming to his rallies. He didn't have to pay anything for it. And they were interested in broadcasting everything he was saying simply because it was exciting. But now with Kamala, hers was boring, but the media was still pumping her up as if she's going to be the next president, which we now know is absolutely not true. So supposedly she spent over $1 billion and she ended up 20 million or so in debt. And when you look and see where this money's went, all of a sudden everybody, I didn't get paid. She didn't pay me. And you're hearing this, you're like, well, there's got to be receipts. But when you look at the receipts that you do see, you're like, wait a minute. You spent all this money on entertainers. You had these morons coming to your stages to twerk, and it's like, yeah, you blew it. And I can't think of a better evidence that this was not the person to balance the budget, not the person to deal with the national debt, not the person to be running the economy, than to look at the fact that they mismanaged their own campaign. I mean, that's a perfect analogy. It's like, I wouldn't trust you to run a hot dog stand. But anyway, in NBC News, they just put out this story, 11:20 a.m., November 22, how Trump won according to the NBC news exit poll. So it says Donald Trump has been elected the 47th president of the United States. NBC News projects overcoming polls, prosecutions, and other pitfalls that appeared to be standing in his way over a 2-year campaign. His win comes after a campaign against Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris, or vice president, I should say, dominated by debates over hot-button issues like abortion and immigration, as well as a focus on race, gender, and other demographic divides that have long simmered in U.S. politics. Let me just say this. What Donald Trump pulled off, obviously, he couldn't have done it without the people's vote. But winning despite everything against him, he didn't just win the presidency. He didn't just win the Supreme Court. He didn't just win the Congress. He didn't just win the popular vote. He didn't just win the electoral vote. We had a gender war, and it's still going on. The gender war doesn't end, but we had a gender war going on. I would say that the gender war really hit a new phase during COVID and the rise of Kevin Samuels. And he's basically an unsung hero of this gender war. He's one of the unsung heroes. Kevin Samuels is an unsung hero of this gender war. On top of him, I would also say Governor Abbott, who shipped those illegals all over the country to these blue states and put these people on these blue governors and these blue senators' doorsteps. He's an unsung hero. I remember having to argue with people, oh yeah, Abbott's guilty of human trafficking. He's going to jail. I was like, no, he's not. If he was going to jail, you would have locked him up already. He ain't going to no jail. This guy spread the pain. And by spreading the pain, he made all of these blue states feel exactly what they feeling down there on the border. That was absolutely brilliant. That was a chess move, an absolute chess move. Like you're thinking 4D chess when you're doing stuff like this. There was a gender war going on. And the gender war, you got the women, oh yeah, well, we want the men to pay for everything. We're not giving them anything. We're giving them used cat. We're giving them run-through cat, but we expect them to pay for everything. We're coming to these relationships with children from other men, and we expect these new men to pay for it. These simps, these cleanup bros, these stepdaddies, these cleanup bros. There was a big gender war going on. I think to myself, I'm like, imagine how inflated these women's egos would be had Kamala Harris won. Now, Kamala Harris, obviously she ran a pathetic campaign. She's got her sorors from AKA dancing beside. She's always dancing. Every single frame you see, she's dancing with the ladies. This is how they were trying to sell us her cultural identities. Oh, she's a black woman. It's like, wait a minute. I don't even know anything about her. But they're trying to sell that to us, and we just didn't buy it. And not only that, identity politics really didn't matter in this case. The reality was this was about the economy. And from the point where we saw gasoline prices hit $6 and $7 onwards to the point that she lost, we didn't forget any of that. Just because you try to bring gas prices down in the 11th hour doesn't mean we're going to forget. Bacon, butter, all those condiments, all that stuff was sky high. It's like, did you think that we were going to forget? We're not going to forget. Of course we're not going to forget. And we handed her ass. So reality was, it was really the economy that did her in. Had the economy been going well, she probably would have won. But she didn't because the economy was not going well. So I'm not going to rehash on that too long because we already understand that. So I want to get down to their data. It says they include voters' frustrations with their own finances, deep dissatisfactions with the nation's economy, and persistent gloom about the state of the country, all of which fueled a desire for change. Nearly half, 45% of all voters, said that they were worse off financially than they were 4 years ago. That was a higher level of dissatisfaction than what registered in exit polls in any recent election going back to 2008, when the election took place amid the financial crisis that propelled Barack Obama to victory. And see, that's my point right there. Barack Obama came about when Bush's economy was in collapse. September 15, 2008, the Dow dropped, I believe it was 777 points. Now, in retrospect, that really wasn't that much. But the gloom and doom talk on Wall Street about banks possibly closing, there'd be no bread on the shelves, houses being foreclosed, That was what really did it. And then you also have to factor in all those people. Oh, my pension. Oh, Social Security. Like, these people have been drumming up these fears about Social Security for a long time. And I keep trying to remind people, I'm like, yo, listen, Social Security is a tax. They charge you a tax for Social Security. It's usually, I think it's like 12.6%. Half of it's usually paid by your employer. The other half is paid by you. Now, that may not always be 100% true, but the bottom line is it's a tax. That's not going anywhere. That's literally baked in to the law at this point. In order for them to change that, they probably have to have, 3/4 of the House, 3/4 of the Senate, and 2/3 of the state to agree. That's not going to happen anytime soon. They're not going to get away. And let me also just say this really quickly. Social Security has always been considered a third rail of politics. There's a lot of old people, and they're not going to stand for you doing anything to Social Security. The problem that I see with Social Security is these younger people aren't earning enough money to pay into Social Security. And therefore, it looks to me like it's a Ponzi scheme that just doesn't have enough new people paying into it to keep it running. But one thing I'll just say really quickly is before any congressperson or president or anybody else touches Social Security, you're going to have to deal with a bunch of these old, bearded, AR-15 owning Americans who just ain't having it. Now, you saw January 6th. From what I saw, January 6th was mostly, it looked like there were people who were unarmed. Now, I don't know what was under their clothing. I don't know what was under their jacket or their vest or whatever. But one thing I can guarantee you is if anybody messes with Social Security, I don't care if it's Trump, if anybody messes with Social Security, them people going to show up to January 6th again. And you know what I'm saying. I don't even have to say it. You know what I'm saying. These people know where their Congress people live. These people will show up to their Congress people's houses. These people will show up to their estates. These people will show up to their doctor office. They're not playing that. So I'm not worried. Let me tell you something. I'm in my 40s. I'm not that far from retirement. I'll be in retirement. You're going to find me in another country on a foreign beach with a chick half my age, and she's going to be rubbing coconut oil on me, and I'm going to be sipping Buco juice. But one thing I can guarantee you is I ain't worried about Social Security because I already know what these people will do to anybody who threatens a Social Security. I already know what they're going to do to them. So I have that thought in my mind. Shit, maybe I should write a movie and make a movie, and I call it The Day They Changed Social Security. And you got armed Americans just rising up. And I don't think they'd want that movie to get published, but after I saw that movie Civil War that they just recently released, I was like, wow, I'm really surprised that they would release a movie like that. But I could see how you could be led to believe that something like that could happen because it's pathetic that they would release a movie like that when we have times like we're having now. We got, presidential assassination attempts for candidates. But they did put that movie out and it's there. And I saw it and I tried to avoid watching it, but I watched it. I was like, yeah, it's not too bad. It actually subverted my expectations because I was thinking they were going to go in a different direction. But if anybody tries to change Social Security, yeah, you're going to have a civil war. So let's get back to the story. It says, all told, the mood of the country this election was very pessimistic. About 3/4 of voters nationwide said that they felt negatively about the way things are going in the country, including 29% who said they were downright angry. The overall result, an electorate gone quite sour on the incumbent president, Joe Biden. And I'll say this really quickly. You may have heard me say it. If Joe Biden had stayed in that race and he had run for president against Donald Trump, especially after he embarrassed himself during that debate, if you want to call it a debate, Joe Biden would have ended up losing much worse than Kamala lost. It would have been Jimmy Carter Part too. That's exactly what I told one of my family members when I'm arguing with them. Because I got family members, all they do, you go into their houses, they're sitting there with a fucking 80-inch television watching MSNBC, watching themselves get lied to by Rachel Maddow and Chris, whatever his name is, who looks like Rachel Maddow, and all them other people. What did Donald Trump say? He said these people wear these glasses to make themselves look smarter. Bill Maher just got himself a pair of glasses. They sit in front of these televisions, and I'm watching this shit, and I'm like, George Orwell never could have imagined that people could be like this. George Orwell thought that we'd be watched by Big Brother and that we'd all have mirrors and shit that had like TVs and Big Brother be watching us. And now you got people who literally went out and paid thousands of dollars for gigantic television so that they could sit back and watch CNN and MSNBC all goddamn night. And being lied to. That's the thing that drives me nuts. And you're listening to this bullshit that they're saying. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not true. I know that's not true. You can't tell me gas prices are good if I go to the gas station and the shit is over $3. They were gaslighting us the whole time. The usual suspects, Rachel Maddow, Bill Maher, Joy Reid, the entire cast of The View. They were gaslighting us for years, at least 3 years. Actually, shit, at least 10. They've been gaslighting us. And guess what? The people, they feel what's in their pocket. They weren't having it one bit. They said no mas. That's what they said. They said no mas. So they came out against them. And they won. That's the key. They won. But what is it? Voters' assessment of his performance, 40% approved, 58% disapproved, was far worse than Trump's when he ran for re-election in 2020. Now, that's despite COVID in 2020. Trump was still doing better than Biden. When voters were asked what quality mattered most to them in a candidate, a majority said that they wanted either someone with the ability to lead or who could bring about needed change. Trump dominated among those Americans, winning about 7 in 10 of their votes. What was not appealing about Trump as voters made their choice, some of the best-known positions he took on controversial policies. Trump barnstormed the country calling for a mass deportation of unauthorized immigrants. Voters panned the idea, just 39% of support. See, the sad thing about it is, yeah, that was his platform. But the reality is they're never going to be able to get rid of all these immigrants. It's not going to happen. A lot of them are going to go underground. They're going to go into hiding. But the reality is a lot of them are just hardworking people who are picking strawberries, or they're doing jobs that these other Americans who are on welfare checks refuse to do because nobody's forcing them to do these jobs. But the bottom line is we'll never be able to replace those people, especially if you've got Americans who literally live in states that are giving them welfare checks instead of making them go out and do that work themselves. So I don't foresee all of these illegals getting put out of here. I think it would take an act of God to do that. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't believe that's going to happen. But we'll have to wait and see. So it says, while 56 preferred offering immigrants a chance to apply for legal status. Me personally, I don't have a problem offering them a chance to apply for legal status. But you have to understand, these people, the burden of these people is literally on the American taxpayer. We're already entering $36 trillion worth of national debt. Taking on these people will most likely push us to $40 trillion within a short period of time. You could argue, oh yeah, if they're willing to fight for the military, they should be allowed to stay. And I would almost agree with that, but we're not in a time of war, except for the wars that Biden's got going on, and I'm pretty sure that Trump is going to end those. Ukraine and Israel versus Gaza. But we're not really in a time of war. We're not in a time of national crisis where we need to conscript anybody. So I think the burden of these people would mostly be on the state. So that could be an issue. But anyway, it says Trump threw his Supreme Court nominees associated with the court's Dobbs ruling, which overturned a national right to abortion. And Democrats took every opportunity to tie him to post-Dobbs state abortion bill. All right, first of all, the vast majority of this country doesn't give a shit about abortion. And that's the bottom line. Either they don't care about it or they're polarized against it. And here's the thing. We're in a country where virtually everybody is using birth control. And I also think that's part of our big problem when it comes to this gender war issue. A lot of people argue that the gender war problems go back to the invention of birth control, because before birth control, women were basically in the households. The corporations convinced women to leave the households and to demand, rights and this stuff. And when they got into the marketplace, the corporations licking their lips because they know that women outspend men. It's just like with student loans. Women hold 2/3 of the $1.7 to $1.8 trillion worth of student loans. Women hold 2/3 of that. Most men go into trade schools, vocational training, technology. Most men are out there building stuff. The women are the ones sitting in these schools getting PhDs. It's not the men. There's very few men who are getting these doctorate degrees unless they're engineers or doctors of something. Most of these men are not getting those useless liberal arts degrees because a ed PhD is useless. Who are you training? And furthermore, if you even take a look at America slipping in educating of its young people, then you'd have to argue, wait a minute, we've got all these ed PhDs, but we're slipping in our education of young people. So something's wrong. But bottom line is, the corporations convinced these women to go into the workforce. They knew that keeping them in that cycle of work, they were going to outspend men, and they were right. They also knew that women were going to outvote men by coming out. And now that you've opened Pandora's box, now you got your gender war. You got these girls in high school. They get birth control and everything. These girls are riding the carousel in high school. They're riding the carousel in college. They're staying in college, getting these degrees, paying into these professors' salaries, paying into these schools. And then they come out old, leftover women, shung yu, just like the Chinese say, Christmas cake. And then now they're deep in debt. And that's the reality. Like, I could care less. Somebody about, that sounds misogynist. I could give a shit. It's the truth. It's something that I couldn't make up if I tried. I only figured this out through observation and through looking at statistics. And the statistics continue to show this and back me up. That's misogynistic, that's sexist. Yeah, you can say whatever you want. I could care less. So anyway, it says identity politics and polarization by race. One of the defining features of Trump's first campaign for president 8 years ago also faded somewhat as factors in 2024 victory. Instead, Trump garnered the support of a remarkable 1 in 3 voters of color. So the Hispanic vote and the black vote for the most part. Most likely the best performance of any Republican presidential candidate since George Bush in 2004. That included a striking shift of Latino voters into the GOP column compared with 2020. They backed Trump by 13 points more. Despite the attention paid to Trump's abortion policies, as well as claims against him by multiple women accusing him of sexual assault and harassment, the gender gap remains stable. Women broke for Harris 54% to 44%, while men favored Trump 54% to 44%. So it was about equal, women going for Harris to men going for Trump. A gap in support amounting to 22 percentage points, but in 2020, Trump performed even worse among women, losing them to Biden 57 to 42. His 2020 margin among men, 53 to 45, yielded a gender gap of 23 points. Now, let's just understand, how did Biden win among women? First of all, Biden was promising, student loan cancellations. Here's my question. In all of Biden's presidency, how far did that get? Student loan cancellations mostly went to the people who got defrauded by schools that ended up closing or going belly up because of financial problems. Most of those cancellations went to them. The thing about it is the news doesn't really delineate, or I should say the fake news, they don't really delineate that too well, because the average person did not get their loans canceled. Now, there are loan cancellations if you promise to be an indentured servant, a math teacher, science teacher, TESOL teacher teaching English to second language students and whatnot. Yeah, there are a lot of debt cancellation opportunities there, but you have to basically be an indentured servant for 5 years. I'm okay with that because basically you're giving public service in exchange for the debt cancellation. But the reality is, these people were convinced that he was going to cancel all of their debt. The simple fact is that wasn't going to happen, and it's never going to happen because that would take an act of Congress, and it just ain't going to happen. It says, despite the attention paid to his abortion policies, Trump won women 54 to 40. No, Trump won men 54 to 44, and Harris won them 54 to 44. So it was about equal. It says, a final factor favoring Trump, his appeal among Americans who are less attached to politics and elections. First-time voters broke for Trump, 54 to 45. Now, that's nothing but the economy. If you're a first-time voter and you went after Trump and you said, I'm voting for Trump, that's the economy speaking. Younger people who just started voting, I can't afford apartments. I can't afford a house. I'm living in my mama's basement. I'm living in my daddy's attic. It's no surprise they went to Trump, but the news and the View ain't going to tell you that. The fake news. They're not going to tell you what. Here's a question. How many times did the View go seek out a random person and ask them, who are you voting for? Why would you vote for him? And a random young person, a first-time voter, how many times did they do that? The answer is 0. They don't do stuff like that because they already know that it would shoot down their narrative. Not only that, the last thing you want to do is put one of these young people on live television because they will embarrass you. They'll say whatever they're thinking, and they are completely unfiltered. They have no etiquette. They have no manners. They have no morals. They will embarrass you. So that's one of the reasons why they try to avoid doing stuff like that. But I totally agree. I totally understand them. I totally agree with the way they plan on voting. Whoever they voted for, I have no problem with it. It says that was a repeat of Trump's strength among these voters 4 years ago when he beat Biden in the group by 52 to 35, as well as 4 years before that, when it helped power his first presidential win. So you know what? The bottom line is we already know that Trump destroyed Harris. We already know it. It was a landslide victory. Now I see on X, you got some of these losers trying to say, oh, Trump doesn't really have a mandate. Don't let them gaslight you. Yo, listen, he won the House, the Senate. He's got the Supreme Court and the presidency and the popular vote and the freaking electoral college. Yeah, he has a mandate. I think that that's a good thing because he has no choice but to end these wars. He has no choice but to show some improvement, and he has to do it in a way that we can feel it. He has to improve gas prices. He has to improve food prices. And ironically, all you have to do is make gas prices cheaper and food prices will follow. Because energy is the ability to do work. If you raise up gas prices, food costs more to ship, food costs more to make, food costs more. You can't grow these animals without feeding them corn and all this stuff. You need fuel for your tractors and all this stuff. The simple fact is, if you lower energy costs, food prices will follow. That is a basic law. Lower the energy costs, food prices will follow. If he just improves gas prices, food prices, what's the other one? If he just does those two within his first year, and along with this war in Ukraine, if he just knocks out those 3 things, that'll make his presidency go much, much smoother. Now, the Democrats are pro-war at this point. I don't know how the flip happened, but the bottom line is ending it is a mandate. We don't give a shit what the Democrats want. We don't care what Biden wants. We don't care what Kamala wants. It's time to go in the opposite direction. The country has spoken. And that's it. So yes, he has a mandate. I don't give a shit what anybody on MSNBC says or CNN. He has a mandate. The people have spoken loudly and clearly. He has a mandate to do this. So I think if he gets rid of just those couple of issues, I think his presidency is going to be fantastic. They've been trying to pump us with fear. They've been trying to pump us with anger and anxiety for a very long time. And it hasn't worked. That's the beautiful thing about it. It hasn't worked. So I want to see everybody at MSNBC lose their jobs. I want to see it sold off because apparently that's what's happening. If CNN goes under, I'll be happy to see that too. That will be quite entertaining for me. ABC, The View, let them keep fighting. I'm enjoying that. I love The View. I learned their theme song pretty much. I love this version of me. It's like y'all had these women gaslit for years watching this bullshit. And now I'm watching you tear yourselves apart. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, yes, he has a mandate. I need you to get those couple of things done. Yes, I'm so thankful that Elon Musk is right there next to him because regardless how you feel about it, you got to see the problem is people just don't see the bigger picture. Yeah, you like V8 engines. I did too. I had a bunch of them. You like having these internal combustion cars, but you got to understand, this is a race against China and electric vehicle production. China, and you got to remember, I just came back from Singapore and Bali. I spend a lot of time, like every single year, I spend like a month in Asia, at least. China is going to go into Africa. They're going to go into South America. They're going to go all over Southeast Asia. It's like Bruce Lee said, it's the art of fighting without fighting. They are going to take over all the rest of the world, but they're going to do it through partnerships, infrastructure improvements. They're going to go into parts of Africa that America and Europe neglected. All they ever did was go to these countries to steal and to destabilize their governments. That's all they've ever done. Haiti, Cuba. Cuba's 90 miles off our coast, and they have more to gain from China than they have to gain from America. Venezuela. There's a lot of Chinese living in Venezuela. China's going to go all over the world. They're going to basically say this. They're going to say, hey, you guys have ore and you have minerals that we want to use to build stuff like your new iPhone. And we'll come in and we'll give you electric cars that we made cheaper than they make them in America. And we'll give you electric cars. We'll help you wire up your communities. We'll put wires and shit everywhere. We'll give you plumbing. Because, in Africa, I've been to Seychelles, Africa. It's dark at night. It's fucking dark. They made fun of Africa. Not the Chinese, the Americans and the Europeans. They made fun of Africa for years. Oh, yeah, it's the dark country. Yeah, that was really fucking funny. Well, guess what? China's going to come into Africa. China's going to build all types of shit. Like they're in Djibouti right now. They're going to build toilets. They're going to build sewers. They're going to, and you take it for granted because you probably live in a country where you already have that stuff. You take that basic shit for granted. China's going to go into these countries and they're going to build these countries' infrastructure up. And electric vehicles are the instrument that they're going to use to get to that direction. But y'all don't see it. Some of you just don't see it. And I totally understand the complaints about the infrastructure. Oh, there's not enough charges, blah, blah, blah. But there's only not enough charges because people like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they were given over $1 billion. And supposedly they only built 8 charges out of $1 billion. So that just tells you right there that these people were never serious. God knows how much of that money got grifted. God knows how much of it got sent over to Ukraine or Israel. But the bottom line is, we'll probably never know that. But the bottom line is, they ain't in charge no more. It's over. It's over for them. And I thank God that it's over for them. Donald Trump defeated the Clinton machine, he defeated the Democrat machine, and he destroyed Biden, Kamala Harris. I thank the Lord God for that. And I say that aloud, and I mean it. I thank him for that. I cast my vote. I went to sleep that night at 11 o'clock knowing that things were going to be better. And I woke up to this, and I said, yes, thank you, Jesus. So the reality is we've got mandates. If America intends to stay the global superpower, despite the challenges from Russia and China, these people have decided they're not going to use militarism to fight us. They're going to use economic warfare. And my thing is, I'm okay with that because I'm a capitalist. As far as I'm concerned, economic warfare is all fair. If you can make a better product and you can offer better services, then you deserve to be on top. How do you think Elon Musk got to be $250 billion? Now, everybody, oh, yeah, he's a criminal, PayPal mafia, and this, that, and other. Then you see one of these rockets take off and land vertically. And you're like, how the fuck did you do that shit? And that's not something we make up. That's real. Like, that's not something like the people, oh, yeah, we never landed on the moon. Yo, listen, we got rockets and shit taking off and landed like they do in the cartoons. It's like, how did you pull that off? Meanwhile, NASA wasted all of our money on Lockheed and the space shuttle program. We lost 2 of those, by the way, with like 8 astronauts each, I think. So, it's really sad when you think about it. It's like back in the 50s, they expected us to be on Mars by now. How far have we got? We went to the moon. We haven't been back. Some people think there's Transformers on the moon. That's why we're not going back, because there's Transformers up there. But bottom line is, we went to the moon. It's been all this time. We haven't even gone back. It's like they expected us to have colonized like Jupiter by now. Like Jupiter is a gas giant. You can't land on it, but it does have moons. They expected us to be on Io. They expected us to be on Europa. They expected us to be on all these moons and colonizing space and shit, because they believed that our government back then was going in the right direction. And that's why. What those people back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, what they never imagined, well, and granted, the moon landing was in the 60s, but what they never imagined that we'd hit 2024 and that we'd be arguing over whether or not trans men could use the bathroom with young girls. They never imagined that would be where we are now. They never imagined women would be rallying over whether or not they have a right to kill their own babies. They never imagined any of that. They thought we were going to be Star Trek. They thought we were going to have warp drive. They thought we were going to be up against the Klingon Empire right now. They never imagined that we'd be right here with our kids brainwashed on TikTok, doom scrolling through stupid news and fake news. They never imagined that we'd still be here. You got to understand what the aspect I'm looking at it from. These people assumed that we'd be so much further. They thought we'd have colonized the moon by 2024. If you look at any of those sci-fi movies, they thought by 2000 that we were going to be on other planets. By 2000, that's 24 years ago. They never imagined that in 2024, homelessness would be on the rise. House inaffordability would be on the rise. Inflation would be high. Food prices would be high. They never imagined that the kids would be dumber than ever. They never imagined that the subways would be unsafe because people would be stabbing people on the subway. We had some stabbings this week here in New York City. They never imagined that we'd be arguing over what bathroom grown men with mental illness would get to use. They never imagined any of that. So when the country tells you that you're on the wrong path, and they vote that way and say we're on the wrong path, that's the aspect, that's the perspective you have to look at it from.
Hubby.
No.
Big Al.